I'll take Good morning. I'll call our March meeting of Central Oklahoma Transportation and Parking Authority to order. I know we do have one citizen to be heard, and then I've got an item on the modern streetcar update. So if you'd like, Mission, aren't you with Mission to Mercy? Or yeah, if you'd like to come forward and tell us your name and organization.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time this morning. I'm Teresa Singleton. I'm the director of the Delta Dental of Oklahoma Oral Health Foundation. Our organization, along with the Oklahoma Dental Association and the Oklahoma Dental Foundation, conducts something called the Oklahoma Mission of Mercy, affectionately nicknamed OKMOM. We do this every year. We've done it for 7 years. We've done it in a different city each year, from Oklahoma City to Tulsa to Enid, Lawton, and McAllister, and next year we will be in Woodward. We do this the first weekend of each February. And what happens is about 400 volunteer dental professionals and 1,000 to 1,500 lay volunteers come together to serve anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 people who are in need of dental care that they cannot afford. Many of these people are in pain. They have missing front teeth. They have extreme difficulties with their dental health, and they have no other way of getting that care. So we came to Oklahoma City this year. The last time we were here was actually 5 years ago. In the rural areas, when we go to fairgrounds, we have plenty of parking. It's kind of easy. Oklahoma City and Tulsa, of course, are a challenge. Last year in Tulsa, we did kind of a you're-on-your-own parking. It was very, very difficult. Our patients have difficulty with money, and even coming up with $10 to park all day, much less finding a place to park, was a real burden. This year, we were told that the complexities we certainly understand with the contracts and with the reserved parking just make it really impossible to even for us to buy parking in order to provide it free to our patients. However, I was then connected with Corey Hubert in the final hour at the end of December or beginning of January, and he said, you know what, that's impossible. I said, I know I've been told that. I just had to ask one more time because you're new. And he goes, it's impossible, but it's too important not to try. And he set about doing I don't know what, but he made the impossible happen by talking to the people who could come together to make that happen. So we were able to provide our patients and our volunteers with free parking in cooperation with your department, and I just came to thank you for that on behalf of the 1,650 Oklahomans who received over $1.7 million in free dental care at the first weekend of this February. So again, thank you for what you do for our city, and thank you very much for your help. And we want to also thank Corey Hubert for all of his help. Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, how do you get all the chairs and dental equipment and everything in necessary to perform such a monumental task?
It is a sight to be seen, and I would love to invite any of you to attend sometime. Our website is okmom.org, and we will always have there the next event. It'd be a nice little trip up to Woodward next year, but what happens is a big tractor trailer comes in, and it's full of portable equipment. And this is the kind of equipment that might have been schlepped in the rainforest to help people, on the foreign mission trips, and suddenly, finally, someone realized about 10 years ago, we've got some people right here in the United States without access to dental care, and they're in pain, and they're unemployable, and they're missing work, and they're missing school. So we employed those same types of equipment, and it pulls up, and we unload it with, like I said, 1,500 volunteers. It is a true sight to be seen, and I would encourage you to go to our website and look at the photos, because they are astonishing to see 130 portable dental chairs and the equipment that it takes around that. We lay PVC pipe. Everything is very sterile. Everything is very first class. All of these patients are receiving top-notch care as though they were in a private dental office.
Well, it's amazing. Thank you. It truly is amazing.
It is. And it can't be done without the whole village. So, again, thank you for being part of that with us this year. Any other questions? Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Now we've got a modern streetcar update, and I think Doug Smith with Jacobs Engineering is going to give us an update on our streetcar, and been a lot about it in the paper lately, so hopefully we know a little bit about what's going on, but maybe you can enlighten us some more.
Well, hopefully I can give you a little more detail than that. So good morning, Mr. Chairman and trustees. It's a pleasure to be here and give you some more background on the project. I have three major areas to update you on. First of all, we'll go through the vehicle status, then we'll go into the maintenance facility, and then the main line. And of course, with the main line will be an explanation of this new route that we've done. And then finally, I'll give you an update on the upcoming activities so you kind of have an idea of what's coming next. So I'm going to try to get the clicker for these slides. And then you should have the hard copy handouts on your desk as well. So anyway, first of all, let's see, we'll go to the next slide, the agenda. And so basically that's what I just told, what I just said. So let's go to the next one and talk about the Brookville contract a little bit. These images are, on the left, the actual Brookville rendering of what the Oklahoma City streetcar could look like. This is their Liberty car. They currently have these in service in Dallas, brand new service that I believe opened last April. And so that is a picture on the right of what that looks like in a very recent photo. Of course, you know, that's something that you can visit anytime that you're in Dallas. But anyway, that's basically what the Liberty car looks like and very similar to what we'll be getting. Next slide. The Brookville vehicle experience was a changing thing. First of all, they didn't have a vehicle of this type in service when we took the original bids on the project, but they're quickly coming into the market, and as they did in Dallas, they're putting things in service. So Dallas did introduce the first of the Brookville vehicles, and the experience to date has been good with that vehicle. So other cities are following suit, and they've ordered, and so Detroit's order is in, and those are being built in Brookville as we speak. We're trying to get Oklahoma City's order in next on the assembly line, and then Milwaukee's would come after that. So Brookville is in the middle of all this, and we see that as a good sign. We believe that the technical risk that we initially thought we might have had with the vehicles significantly reduced compared to when the initial proposal was made. So pretty excited about where Brookville is with this product. And so on the fabrication delivery schedule, we worked with Brookville to identify a production window, and as I said, we believe that we could fit right in after Detroit and before Milwaukee, and that actually helps us with the delivery time. And they can also accommodate going from 5 to 6 vehicles, which I'll get into a little later on when we talk about the route modifications that we've talked about related to the convention center. So we do believe we can actually get them delivered ahead of our original schedule, which would have the first vehicle arriving in May of next year for the first vehicle, and then there would be about 1 vehicle per month after that, leading up till around November of 17. And they have an excellent record of meeting schedules so far. They have every intention of meeting this delivery schedule, which is basically in about 14 months from notice to proceed to the first vehicle. And right now we're just working through the final bonds and insurance issues on their contract, and then it would be going to City Council. And so that's pending for a City Council agenda very soon. So in summary of where we're at, we're contracting for a vehicle that's in production. There's limited development risk. We'll be able to look at mock-ups. We'll be able to go to Dallas and talk about the features that we like and don't like and work through that very quickly. We'll meet the performance needs of our system. They've done a preliminary modeling of off-wire performance. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute, but it does match very well the overhead contact system design that we're planning for. And so, but we will need to do some new modeling for the revised route going down to the convention center. It does fit in with their current production schedules. It's likely to achieve our schedule goals for the overall project and opening day. The pricing is good. It's within our original budget, so it fits in with the overall MAPS budget for the program. We believe their abilities are satisfactory, and they can accommodate our requirements for the 6th vehicle. And we also have provisions, optional provisions in the contract for additional vehicles beyond that on an extended time frame. So anyway, just to update you, I've probably shown this to you before, but in terms of on-off wire, on the left you have a graphic of what we wanted to have the minimum off wire. That's so that we can lower our pantograph under the BNSF bridges, and because we didn't have overhead clearance under there, and so we wanted to be able to, blue line there indicates the off wire that we wanted as a minimum, but then on the right side you can see the areas that we were hoping to go to as a maximum wireless configuration, and that's really where we've ended up with the battery performance that Brookville has in their vehicles. So the blue line that we're showing on that map is what we're going to be able to accomplish in terms of the off-wire sections. The green areas are optional areas that we have in terms of our mainline design. We have designed overhead wire in those areas, but depending on the final battery modeling, we may be able to take some of that overhead contact system out of the project and save a little bit of money there, depending on the final modeling. Now, the reason we need to update the modeling is that, and I'll show you this again in a minute, is we now extended the route on the south end, so we have more off-wire around the south end going down to the boulevard, and so we need to get that modeled and see how far we can stretch our batteries, and so those green areas may become more important that we include them back in the project. Let me move on to the maintenance facility then. This is our most recent rendering of what we're designing. We are right now at about 95% design, so right at approaching final plans. This is the north side facing 7th Street, and so this is the facade that goes on the very front, and as you might recall, this was set up intentionally to match the Union Station. And a really fun story on this is that we have, through some historical research, found out that the quarry that actually cut the limestone for the Union Station in 1931 it was closed for several decades and just a few months ago reopened. So we've contacted that quarry, and they're going to make this block available to the project. And so we're actually going to be able to, it's near Springfield, Missouri. We're actually going to be able to get block that's an exact match for the Union Station and put on the front end of this. We're actually going to include it in some of the sections that wrap around the side of the building. So it's also a very good price. So it's just a win-win in many ways. We're really excited about how this has turned out. So that's just the latest rendering. And then the next one is the yard layout. So this kind of gives you an idea of the track and as it comes into the yard and as we go into the parking positions. You can see positions 1, 2, and 3 are, well, 1 and 2 are inside the building. Position 1 is a service and maintenance position where there's a pit underneath where they can work underneath the car. There's a mezzanine above where they can get the roof and work on the air conditioners or the pantograph and the things on the roof. Position 2 is a heavy maintenance position where the vehicle can be jacked up and they can pull the trucks off and roll them around and get the wheels trued up and that kind of thing from there. Position 3 is the wash track, so it's actually outside under a roof, and that's where all the pressure washer and the wash facilities are. And then 4, 5, and 6 are just the storage positions. So that's our storage track there on the south end, and that's where those would park when they're not in service. There's room for 2 more tracks to the south of this, so 6 more vehicles can be put in that south end. And you see right there on the south end, there's a fire lane to get our emergency vehicles. We've got all that worked out with the fire department about access through there, and so in the future, those would become storage tracks. So we can get up to 12 vehicles on this site. So we have looked at similar facilities in Tucson and Kansas City and then the function of those buildings. This is very carefully modeled in terms of the space programming and the function after that. As I mentioned, it is expandable. We can expand the office space, which is there on the north end of the building. We can go to the east with that. And then I mentioned how we can extend to the south. We can extend that roof line to the south and have more interior space. Fire lane on the south end, it can be phased in terms of the construction, so we have that flexibility. And then all this has been coordinated with the Embark staff every step of the way in terms of how the communications are going to work from the dispatch and the maintenance supervisor, how that's going to work, the office spaces, the yard spaces, and, of course, the equipment that's going to be included. We're maintaining lists of equipment, which contract it comes from, who gets what. We're tracking all that very carefully. So that's the story on the maintenance facility. Next, I'll tell you a little bit about the main line. We're also 95% design on that. And just briefly show you a few details. This is our track slab. It's 8 feet wide. You can see the embedded rail that goes into it. It has a rubber boot that goes around the rail. and that prevents stray current from leaking into the ground and creating any problems with gas lines or other things that are in the streets. The construction involves the rail being set in place and the rebar being put in place, and the concrete is all poured around that, which embeds the rail. So that's what you'll see on this 4.5 miles of alignment, which will start into construction late this year. The next one is just kind of give you an idea of the road reconstruction. You can see that 8-foot panel. This is an example of Broadway. We're on the east side of Broadway. You can see that 8-foot track slab in there, and in some cases we have to reconstruct over to the curb to work out the grades of the street and the cross slopes. In some cases we'll take more than 8 feet apart because we have a concrete street and we go to the panel joints that you see in these concrete streets. We'll take it out and saw cut at the joint line. And so we work those kinds of things out. And then there's a little bit of detail on that pattern that you see at those Broadway Automobile Alley intersections. So we have to rebuild that a little bit as we come through there. So just an example of how that's going to work. The next one is the OCS, Overhead Contact System, pole layout. And this is an example of where we make a turn. In this case, it's the intersection of 11th where we turn south onto Dewey. And you can see how we have to run a network of guy wires or span wires that hold that overhead contact system, that cantilever wire into place. In the top right there, you can see what that cantilever looks like. It comes off the poles and pulls that wire out over the street. And then on the bottom right, you see a picture there of what that looks like after it gets constructed. Next one is to just show you where the traction power substations, or the TPSSs, are. There's 6 of them. The first one is on Reno. They're right near the railroad tracks. So we have spaces allocated for all these substations. We're working with private landowners where applicable to acquire the property that we need for these locations. The TPSS2 is up north of 4th Street between 4th and 5th, and TPSS3 is up between 7th and 8th. Number 4 is up north 11th Street. Number 5 is out east of the ballpark. And these are all generally parking lot sites. They're located along alleyways as much as possible because generally we like to keep equipment like this away from the frontages because, especially with the streetcar project, those are generally going to develop. And we don't want an electrical substation sitting there in the way, so we like to keep them at the back of the lot along the alleyways. And it also helps OG&E and Embark staff be able to access those easily for maintenance by, you don't have to park on the street. You can go park on an alley and get at it. So that's generally, and then number 6 is down at the maintenance facility and be available down there for charging the vehicles. Next, this is a picture of what a traction power substation looks like. So pretty typical electrical substation that you probably see in other locations. This is a walk-in, so you open a door, it'll have security on it, and then you can go in there and work inside and mess with breakers or whatever you need to do. Now the next one, this is an example of the ballpark site. So we're right there to the south of Flaming Lips Alley, just off of Joe Carter. They'll be able to come in off of Joe Carter and stop there along the alley. The access will be from the north side, and you'll be able to come in there and stop. And OG&E has their transformer in there, so like I said, both Embark and OG&E staff will be able to get in there and get at that site. A little bit of landscaping going around it to just shield it a little bit, and that is the ballpark, the private parking lot there. A little bit on the stop designs. These, in general, what happens with these 22 platforms that we have around the alignment is we bring the curb line out. It's a high curb, 14-inch. That's for our level boarding. You can see the protective strip there for pedestrians. Generally, on one side, you have stairs coming up, and then the other side, you have the ADA ramp coming up. And so this is actually the corner of Broadway where it's turning west onto 11th. And just to give you an idea of the general platform layout, that's pretty typical. And then the next one shows you a little bit more about what the cross-section of the platform. There's a pretty typical shelter there, very similar to a bus shelter. It has the single bench in there. It's a very clean, prefabricated structure that gets put there. We have everything laid out on the platform, so really all 22 of the platforms are very similar, typical arrangement in terms of dimensions and the look and so on. Leaning rails are included there. And then I think that's the last one I have for you on the platforms. So that's moving kind of fast there, but that's just a very general update on the vehicles, maintenance facility, and main lines.
I have a question about the shelter. That little metal box-looking thing, is that trash receptacle? What is that, next to the shelter?
Yes.
Okay.
We are planning for trash receptacles there. All right, so now I'd like to get into the convention center route alternatives and give you a brief update on that. So this is a very condensed version of what we talked to the Transit Subcommittee, the Advisory Board, and the City Council about. And so the first thing, when we started into the process, we first developed a list of criteria. We talked with Embark and MAPS and so on about what the criteria should be, and we went, based on that, we went to a first level of screening with MAPS staff, Embark folks, talked to the convention center consulting team about what they thought we should be looking at, and of course the Transit Subcommittee. We went out and collected a lot of data on the lengths and traffic and configurations, and then we came up with a recommendation. We have a decision document to document everything, and then we selected an alternative. So I'll get to that in this process. The evaluation criteria, how accessible is it to the system? How well does it connect with other projects and other features that we want streetcar to serve? How well does it integrate with other projects like the park, the convention center? How easy is it to operate? And how flexible is it? So again, this is where the Embark staff really helped kick in with comments on that part of it. Technical considerations such as utilities and traffic were considered. How much does it impact our schedule, our opening day? And then, of course, our phase one construction schedule, how much does it impact that? Because we're really talking about merging it into one big project, because there were some funds that were set aside for a future phase. So we're talking about merging this all together. So the cost aspects, then, how well does it all fit together with all that? So when we talked to the various stakeholders, these were some of the concerns that we heard. Make sure it serves the hotel, which is the future hotel and convention center, and the focal point of that was the corner of Robinson and the new boulevard. And then make sure that you can get from that corner around directly into Bricktown. And that was an important consideration for evaluating the options. Watch out for the traffic and challenges on Shields. That is an on-ramp to a road that leads to an I-40 on-ramp, so we wanted to make sure that we're aware of that. And try to get this done with only one additional vehicle. So we're going over 5, try to get it done with 6. Check to see how our Phase 2 budget allocation fits. Check to see how the Phase 1 schedule and implementation, how much impact it has on that, like I mentioned. And then make sure it doesn't impact our park project too much in terms of increasing the cost of that project or messing with its schedule or changing the functionality of the park. So all those things were considered. So we came up with 12 options. We boiled them down to 3 good, viable options that had a range of cost and features. And so I'm going to tell you basically about those 3 what we consider viable options. And the first one was number 3, which is what we call the Boulevard Reroute with a Sheridan turnaround. So the idea here was to go south on, instead of just going straight west on Reno, we go south on Robinson, down to the Boulevard, over to Hudson, and back up Hudson like we were planning. And we would also have a turn back on Sheridan so that we create a new service loop, what we call the red line, circulating Bricktown, and then what we're now calling the blue line would circulate like we had planned, the Phase 1 part of the project. So the pros of this is a direct connection from the hotel over to Bricktown, and you can also get directly up into Midtown, so you could take a train either direction. You could run full or part-time service. So, for example, on this Bricktown loop, you could match the level of service, the amount of time the trains are going to run with whatever your customers need. The Phase 1 schedule could be very closely maintained or slightly modified to make this work. We could, with the 5 trains running on this loop with 1 spare, we could maintain 7-minute headways coming through the hotel. So in other words, about every 7 minutes you would have a train that would be going to Bricktown or Midtown, So they come through there very frequently. And then also, because of the extra right-of-way to the north of Boulevard, we could actually have a dedicated lane and not run the train in with the traffic in the Boulevard, which I thought would be a positive. The cons are there are some utility impacts in Robinson that we've got to watch out for, so we could have some extra costs there. We have the new construction of the Boulevard to consider, and we were going to exceed our existing funding by about $3 million, so we made the City Council aware of that, and on each one of these options, how much extra funding we might need above and beyond the current allocation for the streetcar. The next viable option was what we called single service, number 4. So really what this does is it double tracks the Boulevard, and it allows you to have trains going both directions. They're on the Boulevard and going up and down Shields and into E.K. Gaylord. The pros are you have a direct connection. It's very quick and easy to get into Bricktown. You have a single route. One added train could do this, but you have to keep in mind that all the trains are running this route. There's not there's not a red line and blue line. Everything is one line. So this would have a heavy impact on Phase 1. We have the utility impacts on Robinson. We have the impacts on Shields. There is a project going on in E.K. Gaylord, so we would have impacted that schedule. There's some other considerations there with the federal funds that are on that E.K. Gaylord project with Tiger Grant and so on. And we needed another $12 million to implement it, and there's some other factors there. So anyway, that was number 4. And then the third viable option that we considered was 12A. And this is the least cost option. It still provides the connection over to Bricktown. You can run that red line service. You still have the option to go to either Midtown or Bricktown. No schedule impacts to Phase 1. Just keep doing what we're doing. You could run a full or part-time service. With the cons, which some consider to be pretty significant disadvantage, was that you would have to walk 800 foot from the Boulevard up to Reno to be able to get on that line, and so it's not near as convenient as the other options were. So you don't have that direct connection at the hotel. We would have to build, for sure, the terminus out of Joe Carter, because we have the two lines have to be able to pass each other somewhere, and that would have to be out on Joe Carter by the ballpark. And we only needed about $1 million extra to be able to implement it. So that's not necessarily a con. It was just the cost was down there at the bottom. So anyway, the conclusion and recommended option was number 3. So we ended up with a service length about 4.9 miles in the blue line, about 2 miles in the red line. So you have a total service route length of 6.9 miles, which is a significant start to the project. One more vehicle. We need to construct about half a mile of new track. And if you consider the fact that we're taking that dashed blue line in Reno between Hudson and Robinson, we're taking that out of the project. It's a net new construction of about 0.3 of a mile. So we just have to add to our project the southbound on Robinson, the westbound on the Boulevard, and then the cutback on Sheridan. So we added a net cost of about $9.5 million, and then with the funds that we had set aside for the future expansion of the project, we needed about a net of another $3 million. So it provides, again, the benefits, the direct connection at the hotel. You have full or part-time service. We have a slight modification of the Phase 1 schedule. We have a dedicated lane adjacent to the Boulevard, so that could be, we think that's a big advantage. And lastly, and this was something that Embark staff pointed out, is that this is going to provide a lot better service to the existing parking structures. So this creates a new kind of circulation of benefit for people to be able to park in the Cotpa facilities and be able to move around the city from those parking locations, which has benefits to a lot of other businesses scattered around the city as well. So that is the reroute, that's the recommendation, and that's what we are currently moving forward with. So here's what's coming next. I mentioned the vehicle fabrication. We're hoping to get notice to proceed on that this month, and that would go until about November of 17, which is right now about the time that we think the last vehicle would arrive. Storage maintenance facility, we're currently at 95%, moving towards getting that out to construction this summer. The main line, blue line, we're at 95%, the same level, and then we're trying to catch up that reroute portion, the new sections that I mentioned that we're working on design, we're catching that up, and so by about June, we think we'll be back up to 95% on everything on the main line. The rail and track work procurement has been started, so we have notice to proceed given on the rail. So the rail is going to start being rolled in Austria, and that's going to happen actually in the next 2 to 3 months, and we'll get shipped over here, and should arrive this fall. Maintenance facility construction, again, August to August, starting this summer. Mainline construction, we hope to be going in this October, and that would stretch into the fall of 2018. Commissioning would be throughout 2018. We have some early activities that we're starting to think about. So we'd like to get our track put in the Hudson between the Boulevard down to 7th Street, so we can start running trains up and down that median lane in Hudson. And also an early activity we'd like to see is complete the Bricktown Loop, so we can start running that as a test service, because it's easier to complete that. It's on the south end. It's easy to connect to. And then as we complete the Midtown and downtown parts of the service, we can start testing there as well, all with the goal of opening in the fall of 18. So just a very brief summary for you. Happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Chairman, how does that fall of 2018 opening coincide with the construction of the convention center? Is that about the same time? Is the convention center before or after that?
I may need some help answering this, but I believe the convention center is later.
Okay,
than that.
so this will be available earlier. That's good. Thank you.
How many platforms are there being constructed, and will the streetcars stop at other places than platformed locations?
Not sure. There are 22 platforms being constructed, and I'm not sure I heard the second part. I'm sorry.
But will the streetcar allow people on and off at other locations, just on the street?
It will only stop at the platforms.
Okay.
So, yeah, there won't be a way to get on in any other places.
All right. Any other questions? Well, thank you for your update,
Welcome.
Doug. All right. We'll get into the meeting. First is the meeting of our approval of our minutes for our Cotpa board meeting of February 5th. Any questions or changes by any of the trustees? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. And then we had a parking committee meeting on February 29th, and so I'd have a motion to approve those minutes. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Consent docket, we've only got 3 items on our consent docket. Unless there's any questions by any of the trustees, I would have a motion to approve our consent docket. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. All right, our items for individual consideration. We've got several items, but I think Jason can move through them pretty quick. But item A is approval of a contract with Oklahoma Independent Elevator Company for preventive maintenance, inspection, and repair services for our elevators.
Mr. Chairman, Corey was going to speak to this
Okay.
one, and I can discuss the rest.
For the past 10 years, Republic Parking System has been managing our elevators with the construction of, with one single contract. With the construction of the Art District's garage, we brought a new manufacturer of elevators into our parking system. With the Santa Fe modernization, we have two different manufacturers of elevators in our parking system. In January, staff released an invitation to bid for a single contract to oversee all of the maintenance for all of our elevators. During that process, 2 companies provided bids: Oklahoma Independent Elevator for an annual cost of just over $62,000, and Thyssen Crump Elevators with an annual cost of just over $82,000. These fees include Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. service. Ultimately, staff is making the recommendation to enter into an agreement with Oklahoma Independent Elevators for an annual cost of just over $62,000.
Then on the agenda, it says estimated cost $75,000.
That cost includes unforeseen costs, parts, after-hours work, should there be an emergency repair.
All right. Any questions? All right. Thank you, Corey. Then do I have a motion to approve item A?
So moved.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Item B is a change order to the contract with Downey Contracting for tenant build-out at the Arts District parking garage.
Yeah, this is our first change order number 1 with Downey Construction. They are the contractor that is finishing up the Arts District tenant space build-out. Basically, there's 4 items. They're all pretty minor in nature. One of them is actually a deduction of $847 for termite treatment that was included in the original proposal that is not needed. The other 3 items are essentially some enhanced lighting and replacing some originally proposed wood doors with some glass doors, and that's actually at the request of one of our tenants. And they have agreed, because that amount exceeds the tenant allowance, they've agreed to go ahead and pay for those additional enhancements. So with that, the total change to the contract is $10,402, or about 1.42% over the original contract amount. With the approval of this change order, it will not extend the construction time at all. And I noticed the breezeway was closed. Are they working on our artwork finally? Yes, sir. We have some artwork being installed as we speak.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Item C is approval of a contract with UniFirst Holdings for rental, laundering, and purchase of maintenance uniforms and rental of mats and swipe rags.
This is a pretty routine item for us. It was time to rebid the contract for uniform services for our maintenance staff. As you'll recall, we do provide uniforms for both operations employees and maintenance employees. We ended up advertising for bids on January 20th and 27th, received 2 bids, one from UniFirst, one from Aramark. The evaluation committee determined that UniFirst had the best bid and recommend awarding the contract to UniFirst. The term would be 2 years with 3 one-year renewals. And I will mention that we did ask the proposers to bid the uniforms both with and without additional visibility, safety striping. And we are recommending taking the option with the safety striping on the uniforms, particularly in light of a lot of our maintenance employees, in fact, most of our maintenance employees working during the evening hours when it's dark. So we think it's a pretty critical safety item for us, and it'll be an enhancement to the current uniforms.
All right. Is there a motion to approve item C? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Item D is a approval of a contract with National Bus Sales and Leasing and Creative Bus Sales for paratransit bus parts.
Again, this is a pretty routine item in that it was time to rebid for suppliers for bus parts for our paratransit fleet. There's a lot of specialty type parts that those buses require when it comes to, body panels, wheelchair ramp supplies, those kinds of things. So we ended up advertising for bids on both February 3rd and February 10th. We received 2 proposals, and staff is actually recommending entering into contracts with both National Bus Sales and Creative Bus Sales in order to maximize the flexibility that we have, not only in comparing and shopping for prices, but also in parts availability. So with the approval of this item, we'll enter into contracts with both of those suppliers for 3 years, 2 one-year renewal options.
All right. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Item E is final acceptance of project for the Union Station roof, Phase 2, and to place maintenance bond into effect.
Yes, so our roof work for Union Station is complete. As you'll recall, this was Phase 2, which was the flat portion of the roof on the south side of the building. On October 2nd, the board approved final plans and specifications for this project. We issued a notice to proceed on November 6th, and then on February 25th, the final inspection was conducted. And as you can see from the memo there, we had representatives from the roofing company, our architect, Public Works, and Cotpa staff. So with approval of this item, again, it will indicate final acceptance of the projects, and our maintenance bonds will go into effect.
Does that pretty well take care of everything at the station now?
As far as the roof goes,
Okay.
we still have a list we're working from.
Still have a list you're working on, all right. All right, is there a motion to approve? All in favor? Opposed? Next item is a award of contract, what are we on item F? Yeah, for the maintenance building improvements and service building improvements.
Yes, with approval of this contract, we will initiate another enhancement project to the maintenance facility out at 2000 South May. As you'll recall, back on January 8th, the board approved final plans and specifications for both projects MB 1257 and MB 1276. 1257, excuse me, is a project to install a sprinkler system and a paint booth in the bus maintenance facility. Project 1276 adds enhancements to the service lane where the buses are fueled and prepped for the next day. This will add a break room, restrooms, and also some repairs to the north wall of that building. We advertised for bids for this project, received two, one from Jim Cooley Construction, one from Downey Contracting. Triad Design Group helped us review the bids, and with their recommendation and staff's recommendation, we are asking for approval of a contract with Jim Cooley Construction for $612,395 for both projects. That's the combined amount for both projects.
All right, any questions? Not, do I hear a motion to approve? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Two more items, ratification of the administrator's actions and approval for the purchase of 6 new compressed natural gas transit buses from New Flyer Industries. We discussed this last time, and legal counsel said the administrator could order them as long as we approved them, and I told Jason hopefully we'd get them approved because this would be a heck of a payroll deduction if we didn't. So
Yes, you did remind me of that, Mr.
hopefully
Chairman.
we'll approve this item today.
That's exactly right. And so, as mentioned, we discussed this during the Transportation Committee on January 29th. The committee at that time voted to move forward with the purchase of the buses. We are purchasing these buses off of an existing contract between Dallas Area Regional Transit and New Flyer Industries. So we're certainly thankful for DART and their willingness to assign us some options, made the purchasing process very efficient. One of the things and one of the reasons for the urgency of placing this order is when discussing our next purchase with New Flyer, they indicated that if they could receive the order in February because of the production schedule and what they had projected, they would actually be able to fit us into production relatively quickly and actually have these buses delivered in 8 months. So that's one of the reasons for the sense of urgency in wanting to get that order turned in February, because with 30% of our fleet really past its useful life, I think we all understand how important it is to get new buses in as quickly as we can now that we have some of the funding in place. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to receive these buses in 8 months as opposed to generally a minimum of 12 months is what we would expect. So again, with approval of this item, we'll continue to move forward with our bus replacement plan.
And with approval of this item, Colby gets to keep eating dinner at your house, right?
Yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. He'll be very thankful for that.
Yeah, that's right.
All right.
In the interest of Jason's son still getting dinner, I'll say I move
You
approval.
move approval, thank you. All in favor? Opposed, thank you. Last item is a contract for engineering services with Wendell Architecture, engineering, surveying, and landscape architects for our new CNG fueling facility.
Yes, and so This item here, I think, is going to be a very exciting project. It's the start of us developing our own CNG fueling infrastructure at the 2000 South May Avenue facility. And so, as a result of multiple discussions with the Transportation Committee through the advantages of CNG and looking at alternative fuels in the future, along with, I know, the board's of trustees' desire to contribute to enhanced air quality in the Oklahoma City urbanized area, as well as support Oklahoma's energy producers. We are continuing to move down the path of converting our entire fleet, not only fixed route buses, but also paratransit buses and service vehicles, to CNG and other forms of alternative fuel propulsion technology. So what this item here will do with approval is essentially put a contract in place with Wendell Engineering Services, and they will be our engineer for the design as well as the preparation of the bidding documents and eventually construction administration for that project. We did end up advertising for bids for this project. I've got the date here, excuse me, it's escaped me. We advertised for bids in October. On December 11th, Embark staff and Public Works interviewed different proposers. We actually received 9 proposals for this project, ended up interviewing 4, and are recommending that Wendell be selected as the engineer. One of the things that was very important to us in the evaluation process was to find a engineer that not only had experience with CNG facilities, but particularly CNG facilities for transit agencies. And Wendell does have background working with other agencies, including St. Paul in Minnesota, the New York Transit Agency. I believe they've worked with the transit agency in Ohio, so they have a lot of background with not only CNG, but CNG for transit facilities. So with that, we are recommending moving forward with the contract with Wendell. And I'm sorry, one last thing. The estimated cost of $50,000 is for task 1. So as we get further into the project and we complete task 1, which is basically Wendell giving us an operational needs assessment, we'll then move into a preliminary report, we'll move into bidding documents, we'll move into construction administration. We'll be bringing different tasks back to the trustees at each step for approval.
All right, thank you. Any questions? No? Do I hear a motion to approve item H? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Next item is our ratification of claims and payrolls through February 23rd of 2016. If there are no questions, then I'll have a motion to ratify.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Financial reports. Jason said he just had a quick, brief overview of that before we get into our program reports.
Just a couple of things. Looking at page 2, this is our transportation operations budget to actual. You'll notice looking at total operating revenues, we're showing to be about $440,000 ahead of what we had projected at this time. Note that the amount we received from the state subsidy is over budget. We basically received it earlier than what we had expected. So that's $342,405 contributing to that 440 overage. So as our projections catch up with what we've actually received, we'll see that come back in line with budget. And then I also wanted to point out our federal grant revenue is actually at 102.8%. So we're right on track with what we had estimated in federal grant reimbursements. And then in terms of operating expenditures, overall we're at about 88.6% of the budget, so just under 90% of where we would expect to be at this point in time. 2 of the contributing factors continue to be savings in personnel services due to vacancies, and then fuel budget. Our fuel budget, you can see, is about half of what we had projected to this point. On the next page, page 3, Looking at our parking operations, again, overall revenues are right in line with budget at 101.7% of what was expected. I do want to point out that our event revenue is actually showing to be under. We're at about 94% of budget. Keep in mind, this category was 172% of budget last month. So if you'll recall, I mentioned we had received a large payment ahead of schedule. Well, the payment and the projection have now caught up, and so our event revenue is now back in line with what we would expect this time of year. The other thing I wanted to mention on the expenditure side is the parking transfer to capital outlay line. You'll notice that that line reflects about a $2.1 million transfer from parking operations to parking capital. And this was an item that came up in the January 29th Finance Committee, where it was suggested that, we begin setting aside capital reserves for parking. And so we've done that, and that will be reflected in future reports, that operating capital operating unit. And then looking at the river operations, again, total operating revenues are at about 91% of what we had expected, or 91% of the budget. We're shown to be about $47,000 under our projections. $25,000 of that is due to a reduction in the amount we received from the Riverfront Redevelopment Authority for advertising. At the same time, with revenues being under budget, they are still in excess of expenditures. So as far as revenues exceeding expenditures, we're still ahead. And then looking at, I guess, the Spokies operation, again, similar situation there, where our revenues have exceeded our expenditures to date. Now, two things to mention there is, one, we would expect revenues to increase once we transfer bike fee revenue from the general fund to the Spokies operation. And then our operating expenditures will increase as well as we begin reallocating some expenses for personnel costs tied to the oversight of the contract with Bicycle Transit Systems for overseeing the Spokies program. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any other questions about the budget to actuals.
Any comment on the financial statement, then we can approve both of them at the same time?
Yeah, right. The next statement is the interim financial for the pension, and I would just probably direct your attention to page 1, looking at the management discussion and analysis. Really, our net position and the fair market value of the investments in the pension system have remained relatively flat when you compare year over year, December of 15 to December of 14, even though, as you'll recall, we added about $427,000 as a one-time addition to the pension, and that's due, the reason why we haven't seen more of an increase is really just due to investment performance. Our funded ratio continues to be at around 82%.
All right. Any questions? If not, then I'd have a motion to receive our financial reports. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. All right, our program reports, our transit system report.
Mr. Chairman, trustees, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. I'd like to present 4 items from the January 2016 transit report: safety, ridership, on-time performance, and our year-to-date report card. And I'm going to just very briefly touch on one topic from the streetcar report based on the good information that we got from Jacobs. And that route, I just have to say once again, is just, that's the perfect route for all of the 13 to 15 that we were considering. For safety, we were responsible for 3 preventable accidents, which is fewer than half that we were responsible for the last 2 months. The total dollar lost with no injuries of the 3 accidents was $72, including 2 accidents that amounted with 0 damage. And my hat's off to our operators for being so responsible to report what other systems would not consider an accident in many cases because there was no damage. Our 3-month reportable, our 3-month preventable accident ratio is 5.3 accidents per month, and it's coming down. We experienced 4 non-preventable accidents during the month of January 16. Next week, we are going to once again conduct our quarterly safety meetings where every operator is with us for over 2 hours to experience a number of things and to provide their input on how we can be as safe as possible. And I think I've mentioned to you, but it's just a wonderful tool that we have where we use former preventable accidents and put them up on the screen with the operator's face obscured so that everybody in the room can just absolutely feel the trauma. It's frightening to kind of almost be behind the wheel. There are 2 reasons for that. One, it kind of underlines the importance of not becoming involved in accidents. And secondly, everyone can contribute ideas of how we can minimize the reoccurrence of that type of accident. Ridership. If you take a quick look, you'll see that the January fixed route ridership 2016 Monday through Friday is 11,185, which is 6.8% above the 10,472 passengers that we transported per weekday a year ago, January. Now, all of our Saturday riderships were down, and I could give you the percentages, but the bottom line is that we had 5 Saturdays, and one of them was a bad weather day this year, and another one was that one of the Saturdays was the 2nd of January, which is an odd day. Our night service, and in this slide we haven't included the 92 passengers per day that we transported on routes 5 and 13 because we didn't want to distort the ridership where we didn't have a full month worth of those routes running. So next month we'll have a full month, and it will show the jump in those 2 routes. We transported 180 people per night on routes 23 and 11, which is a 15% increase over the previous month. And if y'all want to know what happened in February and grant me permission, I can give you a little preview of what went on in January. Thank you. Yes. Well, we averaged, thank you very much. And it's interesting, we averaged 92 passengers, as I mentioned, during the 8 days that we ran in January for routes 5 and 13. The end of the month, we averaged 95 passengers per day, which tells me that the people that were lined up waiting for that service to happen got on board and stayed on board. And we got 3 additional passengers, but Michael's good work will cause that number to grow. But it's very interesting because we were within 3 passengers of the average for the first 8 days of the service. Those guys were probably waiting since December at each one of those routes. Okay, our on-time performance. We experienced a 66.97% on-time performance, which is 9.5% below the previous January, which was quite the record. But the best part is that it's 5% above the previous month's on-time performance, and we're doing a whole bunch of things to continue to increase that. Okay, our report card. We are at 97% of number of passengers per service hour. We're at 101% of passengers per operating day. We're at 88% of the on-time arrival goal. We are at 126%, which is good, of the miles between road calls, particularly given the aged condition of some of our fleet. Our vehicle accidents, we're at 178%, which is we need to improve on that, and we're at 97%, or almost on target for the number of claims. Do we have any questions about that before I spring into a very brief discussion of the streetcar update? Just a real, just this is
More update than we had? All right.
There was a real exciting thing with
Okay.
Jason, where Michael and a couple of his people accompanied me down to, and Mr. Jenkins, who was our very capable consultant, accompanied us to DART, where we rode on their streetcar and experienced the panogram going up and down. In fact, Mr. Jenkins was inside. I got a picture of him inside operating the vehicle with the, not operating it, of course, but watching exactly what was going on with Michael and I peering through the window. It was very, those were the first 2 cars that were built, and it's a slick deal. I don't know if anybody's ridden on those Brookfield cars, but they lower the pantogram to get across a bridge, and you can watch all of not only the miles per hour, but watch the battery levels, and it's just fascinating. And the pantogram then goes up and reconnects with the wires. But a very quiet, very smooth experience. It was just like first rate. We also went to the maintenance shop where we got to speak with the people. There's one person that is responsible for their 2 cars, and he's promised to give us a lot of assistance. We toured the maintenance facility. It's pretty slick. The security facility, the IT facility. Michael got some great ideas about things to avoid and things to accentuate in the inaugural presentation of the streetcar to citizens. And Dallas just provided us with just incredible resources on their part and time. And if they're watching, we're going to send them a nice little gift, every one of them, including the trainer and the streetcar operator that spent time with us when we were going along. I wish we were all on that streetcar. It's a slick deal.
Where does it run? Do you know?
I do. It runs 1.1 miles from downtown outside of their major DART facility, and it goes across a bridge. Actually, it's a little bit, a few blocks from that, and it goes across a bridge. It runs. There are only 3 stops, I believe, on the streetcar. It dead ends at the restaurant that we went to, Phoenix or something. It's not a real long deal, and it doesn't have many stops, but they have a plan, of course, to keep going with it.
Was it fairly busy, or is it too new in service?
I'm sorry?
Was it fairly busy, or is it
it was a weird time of day, so it wasn't real busy, but it's also only 1.1 miles, and it kind of, to specifically answer, I think there were 4 passengers on the train that we were on. Ours is, the thing that we're doing is, as was mentioned by Doug, we're going to have 22 stops and a whole bunch of other things that are, effectively it's, in stops it's 10 times as many, and in miles it's over 5 times as many, our situation.
All right. Any questions? All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Long-range plan and...
Sure, just a few items. Cotpa staff has assisted in the preparation of Oklahoma City's application for that Smart Challenge grant application. That was submitted back in the early part of February, and actually this week we were asked to respond to another 35 questions. All the cities were, and so we're working on trying to coordinate that response as well. The ACOG Regional Transit Authority Task Force met last month, and they had a good meeting, and one of the outcomes of that was the identification of a need to basically poll citizens to get a sense of what they think about having a regional transit authority and that sort of thing. So a basic step. And you've heard Kevin talk about the night service. Having those 4 night routes is really such a big step towards progress on the long-range plan that you all adopted. There was a conference call with the Union Pacific Railroad. There's actually some investigation exploration to go on to look at right-of-way and access from the Santa Fe track at the edge of downtown Bricktown to basically about the river around Northeast 10th Street. And this idea of access through Bricktown, just trying to make sure that we can confirm the amount of right-of-way and some other basic information is a big step to be taken. And then finally, what we've learned is that the Oklahoma Alliance for Public Transportation and some UCO students are actually putting together some kind of a transit panel. It's exciting to think about younger people really taking an interest in public transportation, and they've asked us for information, but also suggestions as to speakers for that panel. In that regard, just to follow up on a question that came from the board last month, that Alliance for Public Transportation had hosted a webinar, and we have a graph that I think responds to one of your questions that was asked. I believe the board asked basically what sorts of funding sources have a lot of times been used for the long-range funding of transit. And the graph that you had before you is kind of a summary of the kinds of elections that were held back in 2015. So basically the facts are that There was about 30 elections that year, and what we learned is that was about half the number. In even numbered years, there's usually about 65 or 70, but there were about 30 elections, and 41% of those were about potential sales tax for public transportation. 35% of them were about property tax or millage type of an item for funding long-term transit capital and operation. Of the other 25%, 9%, which would have been really 3 elections, they were about other types of taxes or fees. An interesting one was in a Colorado ski town. They were levying, they started to levy like a 4% tax on lift tickets. I won't disclose which city that was, but that type of funding was not just to get people to and from the slopes, but to also provide for transportation around town. And there were 2 other elections about other sorts of taxes and fees. I'm not sure what those were. One of them was basically about bond funding, and then there was another election about starting a regional transit authority. And then there's something else in there that they call advisory, and basically those advisory elections weren't about funding sources at all. They're much akin to what cities do when they have an election to change the charter, something about the governance rules. So those are the facts, and hopefully that completes my comments.
That meeting, Larry, there was 3 presentations by 3 transit authorities. Is this from just those 3, or is this from your research of everything in the country, I guess?
Well, those 3 that were at that first webinar, this is based on just looking at the broader research about funding sources. The 3 the 3 cities that were included back in February were Denver and Charlotte, North Carolina, and Kansas City. In those 3 cities, basically, those were really about situations happening in their communities. In each community, there were issues about sales tax as a funding source. And in the case of Kansas City, there was also one about a property tax millage. So we kind of went beyond just what those 3 cities were talking about to give you a little overview of types of funding sources that, at least in calendar 2015, were.
Okay, thank you.
Larry, if you said it, I apologize for not hearing it, but do you have any information on the results of those elections as far as by type, such as, what percentage of the sales tax initiatives passed, what percentage of the property taxes passed?
That information could be gotten. The actual approval rate based on that, those webinars, showed that about 70% of the tax initiatives tended to pass, and that's a pretty steady figure when you look back 8 or 10 years. To actually tell you what sales tax versus other elections did would require some additional research. But the real source of that is something called the Center for Transportation Excellence, CFTE, and they have a website that provides a lot of information, and the sorts of webinars they've done this year are the same sorts they've done for several years.
And I would assume, Larry, the bond issue, I mean, that had to be for capital improvements. I can't imagine a bond issue for operations, but, or do you know?
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I would think so.
I have a question. What does the RTA indicate in terms of a measure? Is that in terms of is that a fee, a tax, advisory?
They didn't say in that webinar, but in some of the past ones, sometimes there's a vote just to establish a regional transit authority, and that vote is separate from the proposition for funding.
Okay, so that would not necessarily be a financial indicator. And the other question I had is, noticeably missing from this list compared to what we sometimes talk about as a fuel tax. Is there a possibility that that's in fees and other taxes?
In this particular year, no, but that actually has been a source, or there has been a voter initiative in previous years. Other ones that really are missing from that are things like hotel motel taxes and other types of, things like rental car fees. There's a wide range of things that might have been on elections in other years, but just to kind of give you a brief snapshot of a recent year, that's what happened in 2015. Just the fact that there were about 30 elections as opposed to about 60 which is the case in even numbered years, means that, yeah, you probably would have a much narrower set of funding sources.
Well, thank you, Larry. I'm glad you did, took a little time, I'm sure, to do this research, but it's, and you might some way give all the trustees a copy of this graph, if you would. It's maybe at the next board meeting, so that because I'll forget some of that, and I'd like to have it so I can always kind of refer back to it. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, our parking system report, Corey.
In January 2015, the parking system sold 4,602 monthly parking passes. January 2016, the system sold 4,781. It's an 8% over. I'm sorry, a positive 179 parking passes over last year. When comparing fiscal January 15 to January 16, we oversold 108 parking, or 108% oversell. Oklahoma City Public School Foundation, their rent at the Arts District garage was waived due to a lack of restrooms for the month of January. The value of that was $2,075.67. The facilities are fully functional for the month of February, so that their rent will be collected. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, Corey, are we seeing a decrease, or what is the decrease that we're seeing in the Arts District garage?
We are seeing some decreases due to the economy and some layoffs.
We're seeing it more in Arts District than we are in other garages?
That is currently correct, yes. That will be reflected in February.
Okay.
But as you know, our parking committee report, we discussed some ways of maybe trying to move parkers from Santa Fe and other garages because of some incentives we might come up with. So hopefully we'll correct that problem maybe a little bit.
That is what we're hopeful to do.
Okay, all right. Any other questions? All right, Corey, thank you. You have one more?
Just some fancy pictures. As we noted today, the pedestrian corridor has been closed for construction of the art. Currently, you can see approximately 100 brackets have been mounted in the ceiling, along with some electrical plug-ins to plug into the art. Here's a picture of the art without its lighting feature hung up in the artist's workshop area. And then we have a picture of a close-up of the art. And then lastly, we have it lit up. The art will continuously, the color of the art will continuously change. And then pedestrians have the ability to interact with the art through a small camera that's mounted onto the wall in the corridor, where that camera, is my understanding, will sense colors and then alter the color schemes of the art hanging above. Pretty neat interactive concept. Have an update on the conference center. This is our smaller meeting room. The white covers are where one can gain power for their devices. The black little slot in the tabletop holds power and cables to connect to the monitor. Next picture is of the conference room. It's of the larger conference room. As you can see, it sits approximately 50 to 60 people comfortably. If we can go to the next slide. That's a picture of the, sorry, I'm not the best picture taker. That's a picture of the projection screen. And then lastly, a picture of some of the art. That's just a picture of the entryway into the conference center. Timing happened to be on my side when I took that picture, and you can see the sun gleaming in through the colored glass that adds an additional art feature. But if you guys would like to come over afterwards and get a tour of the facility, that'd be great.
Corey? Oh, sorry. Could you just clarify on our participation with the Mission of Mercy? We provided passes to that organization. Could you just walk us through that?
Yeah.
Only because term free parking is always something that we have to qualify.
Thank you. The attendees of the event that got the free dental work, yes, parking was complimentary to them. Oklahoma Mom paid for that discounted parking, paid us directly in advance for those parking passes. We provided staff as those attendees of the event seeking the free dental. The dental work was being done between the hours of, I believe, 5 a.m. and 6 p.m. on Friday and Saturday morning. Thursday at 5 p.m., people were already showing up to wait in line for those free services. But Oklahoma MOM did pay for those parking passes.
All right.
Jason must have seen me giving him the evil eye. Free parking.
Free parking.
There's no such thing as free parking.
There was no free parking.
Thank you. Okay.
Jason, could I, or Corey, I'm sorry, on the conference center, is it available to the general public, or is it only available to the tenants that are in that space?
It's available to all city agencies. It's available to the tenants, and it's available to nonprofits that we have that have a current relationship with the city of Oklahoma. Example, the Alliance and Arts Council. The technology, while individuals, we've used the conference center. We don't have the computer installed. Those details are still being worked out. But one can come and plug a laptop in, for example, and utilize the audio-video system.
All right. Marketing and
Good morning.
morning.
I just quickly, if you want to proceed to the next slide, Chip, just wanted to raise awareness about the upcoming Open Streets event in which we'll be participating. We're very excited about doing this event. We've done it, this will be our third time. That'll be taking place April 3rd on a Sunday, as it has, on 23rd Street. And it'll be from 12 to 4. And we hope that we will see you out there. It's just a great event just to interact with our community, and it's a great opportunity to introduce individuals to public transit, and they tour the bus and they have an opportunity to take some information home with them. And then quickly, I just wanted to show the recent event that was taking place. Ravina's staff, she and her staff have put together this TSA tabletop exercise. We had, I think, over 50, close to 60 people there. This just shows that room at the Arts District Garage, that conference room with people in it. This was a great event, and I was just amazed at how well the technology worked on the very first day with the event. I mean, it was great. You don't usually see that always happen. So we were pleased with the outcome of that. I think we should be very proud of that facility and being able to have that at our available for our use. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. Yes, the 405 magazine recently featured our director in a interview and featured public transit. And again, this just shows that you're seeing different levels of and types of magazines and newsprint that's picking up the story about transit, who it serves, why it's important, and what our role is in making our community go every day. So I hope you all have a chance to look through that. It was, I think, very well done. It highlights, who our customers are and highlights needs that that we need to continually address, and we're very pleased with just the
I
continued
want you to get full credit because it is a great article.
It is very good.
well
We're
done.
we're very glad that we had that opportunity.
I know you didn't want to pat yourself on the back, but you needed full credit for that, so.
I agree, it's a great article.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, any questions? All right, thank you. All right, April 1st, fast approaching.
April 1st is fast approaching. That was the day, that will be the day we begin ferry service for our new season. In your packet, I've listed all of the activities that we have on ferry service specifically to attract riders to the scheduled service. These activities are in addition to specialty cruises and charters. Training of new crew members will take place the end of this month. It's an important thing. HMS Ferries stresses safety and quality training in all of their activities. The marketing activities have all been tailored to address the responses that we have gotten over the past year from our onboard surveys, which represent 5% of our ridership. So about 500 surveys were reviewed to see what people enjoyed about the service, where they discovered that we exist, and various suggestions they might have for service improvements. As for Spokies, Spokies will be at open streets once again to help promote our service. We were also at the Bart and Nadia Sports Experience, and that was a very good event. Joshua Vaught, General Manager of Spokies for Bicycle Transit, developed a skills course, and we worked the skills course in conjunction with Rocktown Youth Mentoring. Over 300 kids got on a bicycle. They had various sizes of bikes for the kids, including Spokies bikes and some smaller bikes. And for completing the course, the kids received either a free bicycle helmet provided by Blue Cross Blue Shield of America, of Oklahoma, sorry, or they could get a headlight for their bicycle. And so it was a very good event, and we're looking forward to a very strong season coming up.
Are all the docks operational? I mean, the
Stations are doing well.
Okay.
Josh is extremely good at troubleshooting and making sure that everything functions well. We've seen a tremendous improvement since he's come.
all our boats have been refurbished over the winter time or whatever the work was done?
Well, we still have one boat in dry dock, because it's such an extensive refurbishment. They're just paying special detail to things like weld joints and things like our bow thruster, which was virtually destroyed with all the debris we have in the river, new bearings on drive shafts. There was a lot of work involved in getting that done. Don't have a completion date on that vessel as yet, and hope to be able to get another vessel done before the end of the year.
All right, any questions? All right, thank you. All right, any items from the trustees? Jason?
Yes, sir. Just wanted to thank the other city departments that participated with us in that TSA tabletop exercise. Although it was primarily focused on emergency response for transit agencies, we had representatives from Public Works, the police department, fire department. We had risk management there. I'm sure there's some that I'm forgetting, but it was a great team effort, and appreciate all the other departments participating with us in that.
I might add, Mr. Chairman, that March 15th, I believe, is National Transit Operators Day.
March 18th.
18th. And so on the 15th of March, the City Council will be recognizing the day and also acknowledging the awards that were presented to us for the Embark system in last month's meeting. So just wanted to make you all aware.
All right, then everybody have a great weekend until our next meeting, and maybe the wind will quit blowing and we'll get back to normal weather in Oklahoma. Thank you.